Hello and welcome to the Week in Nintendo. I am joined by the beautiful Steve Bowling. Hi, Steve. How you doing?
I am doing great. It's weird to be a co-host on this show. I think this is my first turn as co-host on the Week in
It's
Nintendo.
weird to be a host. I feel like I'm imposing on your property right now.
Not at all. I'm really happy to have you here. So, I mistakenly said last week that there wouldn't be an episode because I was a little too busy to pull one together. But then it turns out that you took the helm and I was able to come back. But I kind of like this dynamic. I'm interested to see what it's like to be on the other side.
Yeah, this is my first week back since taking a Christmas break, so it's been a bit funny to get back into the whole YouTube thing. We've done a few videos this week, and there's more coming along. But it's nice to be back. You know, when you've got kids, it feels like having a Christmas break isn't so much of a break, and you come back to work, and that's your holiday now.
Yeah, I agree with you so much. I had my kids for a bit of the holiday because obviously they share time with their mother, but we were, the kids are so happy and excited, which is wonderful. But
Yeah.
as a adult living, kind of a slower pace of life, you tend to get a bit exhausted from that like exuberance and energy after a while.
Mm-hmm. When I dropped my daughter off on her first day back at school, she said, "Are you going to miss me, Daddy?" And I was like, yeah. I'll miss you after spending all day in, day out for around 3 weeks. I'm gonna miss you.
I'm gonna miss you, and Santa Claus is definitely a real guy.
Exactly. But you and I have actually got two things to kind of preview and review on the win to kick things off. So let's begin with the first thing being Romeo is a Dead Man, which you've played the majority of. So let's, what are you feeling? This is a brand new Suda game.
You know me, I love Suda games, and obviously I'm a huge No More Heroes fan. I'm a huge fan of his other games, and I was very curious about Romeo's a Dead Man. So fortunately, they reached out to us shortly before the Christmas break. So this is the game I kind of hinted to on the last episode that I was going to be able to talk about soon. Embargo is finally up, and while it's not a Switch 2 game, it's almost certainly coming to Nintendo's latest console because
so.
yeah, Suda himself has said that he's exploring options for a Switch 2 port of Romeo's a Dead Man already. But I played probably 90% of the game. I can only tell you about the first little bit. But you take on the role of a guy named Romeo Stargazer, and he has kind of a crazy genius scientist grandfather. And it is gory as heck. Like, Romeo gets his face chewed off by a zombie in the first 5 minutes of the game. And his grandfather locks him into this helmet called the Dead Gear, which is kind of a recurring theme, like the idea of naming things after the concept of death in Suda games. He locks him into this helmet called the Dead Gear, which gives him phenomenal powers, and he chases Juliet, his girlfriend and possible terrorist, across multiple timelines and dimensions, killing versions of her to try to find the real one that he fell in love with. This is all set on the backdrop of a universe that has completely splintered and shattered, and you're part of the FBI, which for whatever reason investigates time-space anomalies and disturbances now. It's almost got like a Back to the Future meets The Walking Dead meets Rick and Morty kind of vibe to it. And it's uniquely Grasshopper, it's uniquely Suda, and it shares so much DNA with No More Heroes 3 specifically, that just feels like it's almost a spiritual successor. Like, when you kill groups of enemies, you get that same like weird, wavy, huge dead that appears on the screen with an announcer telling you that. But there's also some stuff that is really unique to it. Romeo has a gun. You can do ranged, gameplay as well. There's kind of like a Dark World mechanic, like similar to A Link to the Past, where you have the ability to travel between two versions of the same place. This game calls it subspace, and it has a very unique look and feel to it. But it almost feels like a mix of like a dungeon crawler and a traditional No More Heroes game. And I'm really in love with it. Like, it is a lot of fun to play. You have to really like that kind of unique Suda aesthetic sense, though. If you don't click with No More Heroes or any of his previous work, you're probably not going to click with this. You're going to, because it's a lot of the same in terms of how he designs games and how he crafts narratives and kind of that, his recent exploration of like comic book and Saturday morning cartoon aesthetics. So if you don't like those things, you're probably not going to like this. But for someone like me, who's a fan of all his previous games, it scratches that itch very well. It addresses a lot of the issues that I had with No More Heroes 3. Like, it looks a lot better. It performs a lot better. No More Heroes 3, I felt like the models had kind of this weird plasticky Unreal Engine thing to them that I didn't love, where Romeo as a Dead Man is honestly pretty beautiful.
Yeah, No More Heroes 3 was kind of like Unreal Engine 4 pushed about as low as it could go. So you got this very low quality look to it, even on other platforms. Like the art of the Wii games didn't really come through in 3. But you were focusing earlier about how the combat was very No More Heroes 3, and it is. Like, it is basically No More Heroes with the gun. You've got the same hack and slash combat. You've got those abilities like you had in the glove in No More Heroes 3. Yeah, you're right. It just feels like a successor to what was going on with Travis. And it's really cool to see that happening again. And I like that they've gone in a different direction. Because as great as No More Heroes is, I think I'm quite content with Travis taking a break for a while. And just exploring something entirely new is really refreshing.
Yeah, I really like this world that they've built up, because I think one of the things with No More Heroes 3 is that the story started to get to a place where you don't really logically know where it could go. With a new character and a new universe, it feels like there's just infinite possibilities, and they kind of explored that idea of infinite possibilities throughout, this whole multiversal concept that has kind of become a pop culture cliche at this point.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy it. But there are obvious, parallels that you can draw. Like, I can't say this on YouTube, but there are expletives Travis uses that Romeo uses. There are, intros to fights that feel like they were just kind of, heavily inspired by his own previous work. And if you don't know he doesn't fully own No More Heroes. So part of me wonders if maybe that's how this game began life, was as a No More Heroes game. And they realized that for whatever reason, they weren't going to be able to turn it into that. So they focused on crafting something new. But I like this direction. Like, there are weird interludes between missions where it's completely pixel art and you're on a ship and you talk to various NPCs, you upgrade weapons. There's even like a farming mechanic in this game where you grow zombies that they call bastards. Like, you have a bastard farm and you plant bastard seeds. And every bastard is just like a run-of-the-mill zombie, but it belongs to you. And so you can summon that zombie to blow itself up or fire a laser. And you're actually encouraged to cultivate different, like cross-pollinate these zombies as though they're plants. And so it's a very interesting set of mechanics. I don't want to just say like, this is another No More Heroes. I think it has a little bit of No More Heroes in its heart, but it does feel like something that's all its own.
I'm really excited for it. It feels like one of those games that's probably going to go down as like one of the cooler, maybe sleeper games of the year. Because I'm not sure if you've seen what's coming out next month, but it's busy. We've got like Dragon Quest VII. We've got Mario Tennis Fever. Got Romeo as a Dead Man. Yakuza Kiwami 3. High on Life 2. Reanimal. We've got Ys 10 Proud Nordics. Resident Evil Requiem. Like, it's a packed month. So hopefully this does get some time in the spotlight. It genuinely is really, really, really cool.
Yeah, I agree that the release timing couldn't be worse. It's unfortunate, and obviously the hit of the year is going to be the new colored Joy-Cons. But,
of course.
I think this is going to do okay on Steam and PS5. I wouldn't be surprised if it got a second lease on life whenever it gets a Switch 2 port. I think that'll open it up to an audience that is primed for it.
It definitely needs it. What are you feeling about those colored Joy-Cons? Not necessarily just the colors themselves, although that's important, but the uniform of it.
It's been a roller coaster for me, and that's a weird thing to say about Joy-Cons, because I did admittedly see your take, and I was like, I don't think that's right. I was looking at them, I'm like, they look cool, man. Like, I really want these. And then someone photoshopped them onto the console, and everything changed for me. I was like, this looks boring.
That's the big hang up.
And then I saw D-Brand, posted immediately that they were releasing a skin to make them look the right way. And I saw that and I was like, honestly, that's how they should look. And I don't know if Nintendo's afraid to create brand confusion or something. I feel like the Wii U scarred someone at Nintendo so badly that they're so risk averse that they won't do anything fun. And because I don't know that people will not know that Joy-Con that are physically bigger and have magnets in them don't work on Switch 1. And I don't know that making them purple would make someone that stupid not make that mistake. So I'm a little sad that this is where we are, but also something triggered in my brain and that made me more averse to these Joy-Con, even more so than kind of the safe color choices. And that's that the rails are colored to match the existing Joy-Con.
Yeah. So it's still red and blue on the Switch itself, but not on the Joy-Con.
And that bugs me. Like,
it's weird.
I'm like, you've told me what color needs to be on here. It's literally, I know it's a sticker, but it's literally on my Switch. And I saw someone saying, oh, I hope Nintendo releases stickers to replace. I'm like, they're not going to do that. There's no way that they're going to tell you to DIY the rails on your Switch 2. My only hope now, because I agree with you, John, that this is kind of the coda for Switch 2 Joy-Con design now, that we're going to just have these black Joy-Con with these little pops of color. And while I do think it's an overall elegant design, it does make the idea of buying additional differently colored ones a lot more boring.
Yeah.
And I think our only hope for the future is that Nintendo releases a completely differently colored console and that we will then get Joy-Con. But that introduces a whole other set of challenges, right? Like, let's just say they release a white Switch 2, right? Which, please, like, you never did it for the original Switch, but I will buy it if you do it for the Switch 2. You'll get the white Joy-Con, presumably with the blue and red, colorways. But then do they produce white Joy-Con in different colors? Like, or do we have to get black Joy-Con with purple and green? Like, what happens then? So I think they've kind of, in a weird way, designed themselves into a bit of a corner, unless they just decide to let go of this ideology that the Joy-Con have to be black with this little bit of color. That maybe the branding is strong
enough. I don't think they're going to let go of it, though. Because you put it in an image where you can't perceive size, and how do you make a tablet with controllers on the end look unique? It will just look like a Switch 1 if it's just entirely block color. It's just that little C button that makes it distinct.
Yeah, you're not wrong on that. I think it would have to come at a point, I guess, where the Switch 1 is off the market, where they're no longer selling it, and then maybe Nintendo will get bold because there will only be one choice on the shelf. At this point, I do think it stems from just a fear of confusing consumers, which I mean, it's interesting because I'm sitting here saying like, oh, who would get that wrong? But then on this show, I've talked multiple times about how even, Rosie, who is a bona fide gamer, has made the mistake of picking up a Switch 1 game instead of Switch 2. I bought a Switch 1 game thinking there'd be an upgrade path, and I do this for a living. So, yeah, I think that Nintendo is. I think you're right that they're just going to play this safe for a long time, entirely too long, in my opinion. And I have to wonder how, like, obviously Nintendo had plans for this. I wouldn't be surprised if the plans for this specific colorway we're about to get of Joy-Con was in the works before the Switch 2 came out, because production takes months and months, right? And so they had to be having meetings about stuff like this. I have to wonder if someone like raised their hand and they're like, who would buy that? Like, who,
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make a huge difference. Too often.
I don't think that guy exists. I don't think the guy who raises his hand and says, what if we didn't do that? I don't think he works at the company.
Yeah, it's. I have to imagine that needs to be true, because it's a weird setup. I loved buying Switch 1 Joy-Con. They were expressive. Like if it said something about what colors you had on your console. But if someone's like, oh, I went for the tiny green ring of color as opposed to the red one, I'm like, does it matter? Do you feel better?
Yeah.
The only use case I can see for these is if I wanted to have a second set of Joy-Con to to be as lazy as possible and not have to like take mine off when I wanted to play mouse mode or split Joy-Con. I could just leave a pair on the system, but
like multiplayer is the other purpose. Like if a 4-player mouse game comes along, like that's kind of the thing for that. Mario Party does that already, but that's not really a huge draw. But if there comes like a really cool 4-player local mouse game, then yeah, another set of Joy-Con makes sense. But right now, not really.
That's true. The one thing I will say is someone made the point, maybe it was even you, I don't know, basically said in a 4-player game, it would be cool to have 4 distinct colors.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is cool. I do like that, especially if whatever game matches the color of your on-screen cursor to the color of whatever Joy-Con you have. It'd be nice to have, 4 unique ones instead of 2 red, 2 blue.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back to the Switch 2 in just a moment, but before we do, I've got a little review for those listening, I'm picking something up. This is the game Light Gun. So we tried this at Gamescom, and they sent a unit over just before Christmas. So this is, I played around with it, and what they send you is cool. This is officially licensed by Bandai Namco, so it includes Time Crisis, Point Blank, and Still Gunner 1 and Still Gunner 2. But unlike other light guns, this doesn't need a CRT. So you can just point at any TV and it's going to work, whether it's like a PC monitor or like a 70-inch TV. It doesn't matter. It should work. And it does work, which is impressive. It's impressive the technology functions. The emulation quality of these games is really good too. They're the arcade versions, not the PlayStation versions, so it's valuable to have all that stuff at home. I played through all of Time Crisis, a chunk of Point Blank, and a bit of Still Gunner. And I think using this as a way to play through legacy games has problems. Because, let me just get the stuff they sent. 1 second. So, this is the console itself. You just hook it up to a TV, and that's cool. Because right now, the only real alternative to CRTs is a PC with a Senden gun and emulation. And the Senden gun basically puts a white border around your TV, and then the camera picks that up, and it works pretty well. But just being able to put this in any TV, no PC, no emulation, that's cool. And then they also give you 2 light guns in this set. There's one here, and also a pedal for Time Crisis. So it feels premium. But the big problem is while it functions, it is just not accurate enough. With Point Blank, that is like one of the most accurate light gun games I've ever played in my life. You need to have pixel perfect accuracy. It's basically WarioWare with a light gun. And there's some of them. Like there was one game where you have one shot and you've got to hit like a moving target. And I was aiming down the iron sights. I was so sure I was dead on. And I pulled the trigger and it's just a few notches off. And I was so sure I made it. And with Still Gunner, the cursor appears on screen like a Wii Remote cursor. And you can see it moving around. You can just see it juddering. So it works. And I think if it were for a game that was designed around like slightly more forgiving precision, it would be really, really good. But because they've implemented it with these classic light gun games, which are, they demand accuracy. Like in Time Crisis, I would be shooting at the same spot and it would go like in kind of the right spot, but every time I pulled that trigger, it would never be the exact same spot. So if it were a game designed around leniency, this would be amazing. But because it's just built around the golden age of light guns trying to be a golden age light gun, it is not good enough, which is like really disappointing.
So, in the interest of skepticism here, does this thing have any built-in calibration? Like, because every light gun game, if you've never played, obviously you've played one, I've played a bunch, but there's maybe a chunk of our audience who's never gotten the opportunity. In most light gun games, you had like a little calibration screen where you would shoot at the 4 corners of the screen, and that would tell it where you were aiming. It would calibrate the aiming, and as somebody who loves this genre, I can say that I would say most light gun games back in the day were very accurate. And so I totally get your complaint. But I'm curious, did they build in any type of calibration, or is it just like an out of the box,
Yeah. When you turn the machine on, it gives you targets in each corner of the screen to shoot. and it also gives you a recommended distance depending on your size of TV. So I tried it on my PC monitor, recommends you like a meter away, which I measured out, and I was. Shot the targets, they make you shoot each one 3 times, which I did, exact same place, and still the same issues. Tried it in my living room, much bigger TV, did the distance, still same problems. And it's not that the technology doesn't work. It's good. It's good technology. It's just it's not accurate enough to be used in these games.
That's really unfortunate because these are all games that if you're a fan of the genre, you've probably played before. And, I love Time Crisis. One of the big reasons that I never really picked up Time Crisis at home is because I wanted that pedal setup, because in the arcade, you have a similar thing where that pedal, puts you in and out of cover. And I saw this at PAX West, and I didn't get an opportunity to play it, unfortunately, but I do remember thinking, from the marketing, I thought it was just going to be like a modern light gun that you could use on your old games. And I was like, that's cool. Like, I want exactly that. When I saw that it was a set-top box that had some games pre-installed, I lost a lot of hype. I was sad that, I wasn't going to play House of the Dead 2 on this thing. So I'm sad to hear though that it's inaccurate, because to me that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, a lot of its design is done through machine learning, so there's a chance that it can improve over time. Like if there's a second unit that has like Time Crisis 2, and I don't know, maybe they can get Sega to do House of the Dead and all that. That there's a chance the technology can just improve over time. But what they're selling right now, like everything that's included, the box is really premium. The pedal's great. The light guns are great. They've got like some recoil on them too, so it all feels premium and good. But just you compare it to a real CRT, and you are not going to be making those shots. And I'd say Point Blank is just near unplayable. Like Time Crisis, you can reload really quickly. It doesn't matter that much. With Point Blank though, I lost like the vast majority of games I was playing. It didn't hold up.
Oh, that's a shame. I had really high hopes for this. So it's just kind of a bummer to find out that it doesn't really meet the standard, because light gun games generally, once you calibrated them, were very accurate. Like you always felt like your shots were going where you aimed. Yeah.
And if someone uses this technology to make a brand new light gun game, like if Namco make Time Crisis 6, I think they could just be a bit more forgiving with where you're hitting. It would work. But it's just the fact that they're applying them to something that's so accurate that it doesn't hit.
Yeah, I think you're right there, that if these companies made something, if they had the interest in making light gun games, which they should, light gun games are great and I miss them. Yeah. I think that you could have a really good experience if the game was designed for the current iteration of the tech, which unfortunately these were not.
No. So disappointing, but there is hope for the future at least, but I would hold off buying the Gen 1 version. Anyway, Switch 2 has now been out for half a year, Steve, 6 months, launched in June. We did a 4-month video. However, a lot's happened in 2 months, and also that video cuts off before it ends, so this is our chance to do better. So, Steve, in 6 months of Switch 2, do you like this console, or is it just a flaming pile of, I don't even know, what would I say?
Plastic.
Of plastic, yeah.
So Ash and I recently did like a 2025 in review for Nintendo, and I gave their 2025 a B+. And I think that that's a solid way to encapsulate this year. I don't think that there was anything that really kind of reached the 2017 levels of hype. But 2017 was an A+ year, and you don't get a lot of A+ years in gaming. I think a B+ is a solid place to be in a console's first 6 months on the market. And let's just be clear, I think the Switch 2 hardware itself is phenomenal. It's incredible. I've played some games on here, some I can talk about, some I can't, that really blow me away in terms of their quality. I've played a lot of older games on my Switch 2 that just run infinitely better now. I've played, a handful of Switch 2 exclusive games that have impressed me. Like, I think that there's a lot of negativity around the Switch 2, but I don't really think it's deserved. I think Nintendo has fumbled in some key ways. but I don't think any of them really drag down the console overall. We're not in like Xbox or PS5 levels of fumble here. It's just small things. The typical Nintendo things where they get 80% of things right, and then that other 20% is just like a head slap decision that nobody understands.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at what the console's missing, like when you're an early adopter, you're always going to be waiting for the next big thing. Like you're always waiting for like when's Zelda hitting, when's Smash hitting, when's 3D Mario hitting. That's always going to be the case. I do think because they went for Donkey Kong, which is great, it does mean that they're lacking 3D Mario. And it does seem like it just doesn't really have that huge main hitter right now. However, though, I still have just a great time playing on the console. It's been my favorite place just to play things, and I've been playing more than I have in a long time. And it's cool seeing all these older games get updates as well. Like I played through all of Red Dead again recently, which I've not done in years, and playing that with the Joy-Con mouse was wonderful. I didn't even have to use dead aim a lot of the time. You can just be so fast and accurate. Like that's my favorite version of that game. Over Christmas, I completed all of Dragon Quest 1 plus 2 HD 2D. That would have taken me ages usually, but it's just so nice to just pick it up and play whenever. So it just gives you this opportunity to play things that were good on Switch 1, but they were compromised. Whereas now we're kind of lacking that compromise. With Dragon Quest, it's now 60 FPS at a really high resolution, basically the PS5 version. And that's true for a lot of games right now. We're seeing some pretty big ones coming up, like FF7 Remake, where we've played the demo. It's basically the PS5 version, only at 30 FPS. So it's nice to have a premium Switch.
Right. The Switch 2 kind of reinvigorates that feeling of kind of magical, hardware. I remember playing the FF7 Remake demo, and I tend to play so many things on my Switch in docked mode just because I'm home, and why wouldn't I use a huge TV, right? But during my playtime with the demo, I had to move to another room, and I took my Switch out of the dock and saw Final Fantasy VII Remake running on my Switch 2 on this 7-inch screen, and I played the rest of the demo that way because I was just like, wow, this is nuts. This is a game I remember playing on the PS4, and it looks better than it did on the PS4 on a handheld. The lighting is better, the textures are better. There's just more impressive stuff going on, and seeing that in a handheld was kind of my Breath of the Wild moment for this hardware, where I was like, this would not have been possible previously, and this is just crazy to see. It's cool to see Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom at 60 FPS, but those are Switch games. I identify them as being possible on a handheld, where, this Final Fantasy VII Remake looks leagues better than it did on PS4, and it runs better than it does on Steam Deck. So this is just kind of an amazing thing where we're in this uncharted territory where now Nintendo has again made it feel like they've done something almost impossible with the hardware engineering here.
And it was hard to feel at first, because at launch, we had some cool games, like Mario Kart World has ambitious scale. Street Fighter 6 is cool, but it's also on PlayStation 4. But then, as the months went on, we had, Star Wars Outlaws and Assassin's Creed Shadows. And it's like, well, that's actually really impressive. Those are ground-up PS5 games. And Capcom, they're doing Resident Evil Requiem Day 1 with all the other versions. And then we're also getting Pragmata Day 1 with all the other versions. And it's like all of a sudden, it's like, well, this console actually can hit above, the last generation and is doing PS5 games. With compromises, sure. Like ray tracing isn't always there in the Ubisoft games, like Shadows is in Outlaws, and Resident Evil, the hair's downgraded, but the games are there and they still look good. Like even if there's compromises, they still look really good.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because, you'll see a lot of people be hypercritical of this stuff online. They're like, oh, it doesn't look as good as PS5. And I think people forget that the PS5 is like a towering monolith of a machine. It's gigantic. And
you ripped the Joy-Con off, and this is literally a tablet.
Yeah, it's smaller than an iPad. And so that's saying something. I think that Nintendo has really listened to developers and given them something really versatile to work with here. And the fact that we're seeing these PS5 games coming day and date to Switch means that the ports aren't nearly as difficult as they were back in 2017. You know, obviously it took years to get some PS4 games onto the Switch. Whereas here we're seeing, you know, developers prioritizing getting these things onto Switch 2 day one. And that makes the situation for those of us that primarily play on Switch 2 so much better than it has been. Because, you know, we can now look at games like, you know, in the future, you know, if Capcom releases another Street Fighter game, we're probably not going to be waiting, you know, 3 years to get that on Switch. We're probably going to get it at release. You know, and until other platform holders move on to their next hardware, which who knows when that'll be, thanks to RAM shortages, we can probably count on, you know, third parties like Capcom and Square Enix giving us games, you know, day and date. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Final Fantasy VII Reunion came out on the Switch 2 at the same time as it does on other platforms.
I think that's the plan, yeah. The industry needs it too, because Xbox doesn't account for many software sales anymore. Like if you're not on Game Pass, you're kind of not on Xbox. Like you get a few sales maybe, but third parties need that pillar that isn't just PlayStation and PC. Like with Monster Hunter Wilds, like it sold well in the first week, but after that, it was getting like nothing. As of the most recent Capcom financial report, Wilds was like one of their worst selling games. Whereas like Devil May Cry 5 was at the top somehow, which is a game that came out like 6 years ago. They fumbled the longevity of that game. But it seems to be coming to Switch 2 based on some data mines that have been out there. But if it were there day one, that might have given it, you know, an extra injection. And it seems like we're getting more and more of that coming out recently. The first few months, it was clear dev kits weren't going out to everybody, and they're still not out with everybody. Like we were getting Switch 1 games with no Switch 2 patches for a long time. With Bandai Namco especially, they only got a few games out there with Switch 2 versions. But now, if you go on the eShop, go on the Coming Soon section, now there's actually quite a lot of games with Switch 2 versions releasing. And we've had a lot of Switch 2 updates lately, which has been really, really cool to see that sort of ramp up.
Yeah, we've been getting a lot more. I randomly over the holiday browsed the eShop, and I was kind of shocked by how many Switch 2 games there were. Yeah. You know, I felt like I knew everything that had come out, and I started to see that red Switch 2 banner on a lot more stuff, and I was kind of surprised by it.
Mm-hmm. My for Christmas, I got Fantasy Life Switch 2 version. I got Trails in the Sky, which is only Switch 1, but you can upgrade to Switch 2 version on the eShop. I got Final Fantasy Tactics Switch 2 and Dragon Quest 1 and 2 Switch 2. It's like this is all of a sudden like this is like 500 hours of games right here. Probably more than that. There's almost too much to play if you're going for some of that big stuff. And then we're saying earlier, February is just packed. Like we're at a point now where there's actually like we're still waiting for that huge generation console defining game. But if you're just focusing on what you can play, there's almost too much.
I couldn't agree more. You know, I've said it in the past, but I played all of Persona 3 Reload over the break, which was 125 hours. So that was like 95 hours base game, 30 hours DLC. I'm halfway through Persona 5, so I'm 70 hours into Persona 5 now. And that's not even a Switch 2 game. It's just an old Switch game I'm catching up on. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the Switch 2 output, like you said, you know, I also got Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D for Christmas. I haven't even cracked it yet. I need to play it. My best friend got me Dragon Ball Sparking Zero for the Switch 2, which is also, it's a decent port. It runs at 30 FPS, which for a fighting game is not ideal, but it's at least a solid 30 FPS. It's more of a curiosity. Like I will say the character models look nice, graphics are really nice, but I'd much rather play that at 60 FPS. And then, you know, I've got, God, I think 3 Yakuza games on Switch 2 now. Those are easily over 100 hours of gameplay. Mm-hmm. Especially if you do all the side stuff, I could count that as a couple hundred hours between the games. You know, Final Fantasy Tactics is another huge game. I have that on Switch 2 as well. There's loads of stuff to do on this console, and I think that a lot of people, you know, there's a difference between having nothing and having nothing you want in particular. And Switch 2's library, I think, is fairly well put together and varied for a console that's only 6 months old. You have a mainline Pokemon game, or you have a Pokemon game. You have Metroid Prime 4. We haven't even talked about Nintendo's own output on the console. And they've released, while they're not generational classics, they've released some bangers on Switch 2 already.
Yeah, I think I describe most of them as like keeping me busy. Like I've enjoyed them. But I think, as you say, it's not the sort of stuff where you're like, this is going to define the console. Mario Kart World, I'm actually a lot more positive than most people. I love playing that game. Been playing it a lot online. There's definitely things they can fix up, but I think my appreciation just grows the more I play around with those mechanics. Like the parkour stuff is just so fun. Kirby Air Riders is one that I've played a bunch and I like it, but it's also not one I typically want to play on my own. That's definitely an online game for me.
I've been playing, I like Mario Kart World. I mentioned this previously. I think my issue with it is that I play it like Mario Kart 8. I really haven't invested the time into the new mechanics in the game, but I also primarily just play it with my kids, and they're certainly not learning that stuff.
They've got to get better. They've got
to get good. They've got a challenge. But I've also played a lot of Fortnite on my Switch 2 because again, it's all 4 of us in my house have Switch 2s, and my girls love playing Fortnite. It's a huge thing for them, and they'll often approach me and just say, hey, will you play with us? And if I have my Switch 2 in my hand, I'll be like, yeah, I'll just play on this. So we hop in with that quite often. I play a lot of I've played a lot of Nintendo's first party offerings on the Switch 2. DK Bonanza was an obsession through July.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where Nintendo's first party output is for me, though. Like it becomes the game that defines the month in which it releases for me, but then it doesn't really have legs beyond that too much. Like Mario Kart World is the one exception where, my kids will want to jump in and play that with me for a bit, and then we'll all go back to whatever other things we've been playing. But largely, Nintendo's first party output is like, I have a great time with this when it comes out, and then it goes on the shelf and I move on to the next thing.
Yeah, I think Mario Kart World's the only one that's really stuck around for me. Like Prime 4, I don't think I'm going to replay Prime 4 anytime soon. I enjoyed it, but not enough where it's like, this is a long-standing game. And same with Hyrule Warriors. Like I wasn't really in the mood for Hyrule Warriors, and then I played it and I loved it. But also, I don't feel like I need to go back and do another playthrough of it.
Right. I mentioned this previously, but I played Hyrule Warriors, and I do think it has a bit of a pacing issue near the end, because as the story starts to pick up and events start to happen back to back to back, they start to smatter in more of those like side quest icons. And at a certain point, I was like, I do not need this anymore. And I ended up ignoring for the last couple chapters the side quests entirely. Because they were all for characters that I knew I wasn't going to take into the final battle anyway. And so I finished the story, and then I saw I had 20 or 30 of these stacked up, and I was like, do I do these? Like, what's the reward? I ended up just Googling it, and I was like, that's not worth spending another 5 or 6 hours cleaning up side quests for. So I'm just going to move on to the next game. But I did find it immensely enjoyable. Like, I had a lot of fun with it, but again, it was great for the time that I played it, and then I just don't really feel a strong urge to go back and replay these.
I think my time with Switch 2 has largely been defined by third-party games, which is healthy, because a lot of the time, Nintendo consoles, a lot of people just buy the Nintendo stuff, and it's been really nice just to play competent, uncompromised versions of pretty big third-party games, that was never really the case on Switch 1. Like, Dragon Quest 1+2 was really nice to play through. Hitman had some issues at launch, but with that 30 FPS cap, still not ideal, but that was my first time playing through those games, and I loved them. Playing Red Dead again was really nice, and playing a lot of Street Fighter 6 on a cheaper subscription was great. You got to play Persona 3 Reload for the first time. It's been really good having just versatile third-party games in a way that Switch 1 always kind of struggled with.
Switch 1 felt like we were picking up third-party games, one, to kind of show support, and two, because portability was a major factor. The idea, that was the advantage. The Switch 1 advantage was, this game runs worse, looks worse, but I can throw it in my bag and take it with me. I can play it on the train. I can play it, when I have some downtime at work or whatever. And with Switch 2, it feels like in many cases, the game looks as good as and runs as well as its PlayStation counterpart or its PC counterpart, what have you.
Mhm.
But you also then get that advantage of portability. And that to
Exactly.
me is incredible, because now I'm sitting here and I'm like, yeah, I could buy this on PS5, but now on PS5 I'm at a disadvantage because this game, I can only play it remotely over the internet, and that's assuming wherever I go has a stable enough internet connection to do that. Uh, it's become a no-brainer for me to pick up most games on Switch 2, and then with the rare exception, pick them up on PlayStation, because unless it's a game where I know I don't really want it portably, I'm only ever going to want to play it on TV, and there's enough of a visual fidelity difference, but those differences are becoming narrower and narrower with each release.
Exactly. It's not the Doom 2016 days anymore where, like, we were all really impressed that game even ran on the Switch 1, and I played through the entire thing, and I loved it at the time. But I think we got to a point a few years into the Switch 1 where your eyes opened and you're like, I don't actually know if I want to play third-party games that are quite this blurry and compromised. And we've not had that yet on Switch 2. And I've had some friends being like, why would you pick up like Resident Evil Requiem on the Switch 2? Like, why wouldn't you play the better-looking version with the better hair? And my issue is, with Resident Evil Village, I played through that game, and I didn't really return for a lot of the side stuff, which I always do in Resident Evil. But that was the point where I think Village released, I think, maybe right when I had Amelia. And so sort of doing that side stuff becomes difficult. Like, just doing a playthrough becomes difficult with a kid. With like mature games, and it'd be a lot easier just to hide in a corner in handheld mode and play like Mercenaries or whatever. And that's why I'm getting Requiem on Switch too. It's going to become less of a like one and done game, and I'll finally get to engage with some of that side stuff.
I do think when you have kids as a parent, having a console like the Switch 2 is immensely helpful.
Yeah.
When my girls were much younger, I would try to steal time to play games wherever I could. I remember very specifically because my oldest, Avery, was born 6 months before the Wii U came out. And I ended up playing the Wii U like just solely on the gamepad with her in my lap. And my youngest was born in 2016, like 6 months before the Switch 1 came out. And I had my review unit, and I would be bottle feeding her and playing Breath of the Wild at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's immensely helpful as a parent to not have to do that. But like, more to your point, there's also just kind of the issue of objectionable content in games, right? Like stuff you don't want younger children to see. Like mine are fortunately getting older to where I can play some things in front of them that I'm okay with. There are others that I have, like GTA 6 is absolutely not getting played in front of my kids.
Right.
But it's nice to have the sense of security of like, I can just flip this away from my younger kids and still play games that aren't just child appropriate, because obviously, as you mentioned, there's hundreds of hours of games to play, and some of them have things that you might not want like a 5-year-old to see on the screen. If you're chainsawing people in Doom 2016, you don't want your kids to see that. And Resident Evil is certain to be full of that kind of content, and it's definitely massively helpful to be able to just kind of tuck yourself away in a corner. If your kid asks what you're playing, you're like, oh, don't worry about it.
Yeah. I saw someone reply to one of my messages put on socials earlier, and they were like, "Oh, do you think the Direct's going to be tomorrow?" And I'm like, I have not even thought about a Nintendo Direct. It's not even crossed my mind.
Yeah.
I know people are always wishing one into existence in like January or February because it's the logical time for one, but I've legit not even thought about it. I've just been too busy playing stuff.
Yeah, I can definitely empathize with people who have wanted Directs historically. I've definitely been in the boat of just, I want a Direct. I want to know what's coming next. And right now I've been so inundated with games to play that I'm just not worried about a Direct. I wouldn't say I'm uninterested. I'd love to hear what's coming next, but I'm honestly not all that all that worried about it. I mean, we have a handful of games that we know of on the horizon. Like you said, February is going to be silly with games for us to play.
Right. We're about to get like big Nintendo evergreens. Like Pokopia is going to be a game you'll play for a long time. Mario Tennis Fever is going to be a game I'll probably play for the whole era. Like there's big games coming. It's that star game though, the spotlight game. That's what people are waiting for, and I do agree we're kind of lacking that.
Yeah, I think if we had like a Mario or a Zelda or something in the library now, people would be a lot quieter about, the perceived issues with the Switch 2 library. I do think that is kind of the primary concern here, is that Nintendo launched similarly to the GameCube without a AAA tier game. And I would say that DK Bonanza, at least from development effort standpoint, does qualify as a AAA game, but I get people who think, they're still waiting for the other shoe to drop. They're waiting for a Mario. They're waiting for a Zelda. They're waiting for a mainline Pokemon game, stuff like that really, is Nintendo putting their best foot forward. But I just struggle to feel like it's kind of almost an embarrassment of choice on the Switch 2 at this point. Like, no matter what genre you play, it's there. Like there's representation for every major genre on Switch 2. And unless you strictly live in like a Nintendo sized bubble, there's a lot to play on the console. Like, you've been playing a ton of Red Dead. I've been playing a ton of Persona, and I have at least 3 or 4 other games lined up that I know I want to get to and spend a significant amount of time with. Final Fantasy VII Remake comes out near the end of this month, and that is a game that I will go revisit and likely play completely through again on the Switch 2.
With Switch 1, I think there were some genres that had kind of gaps, I would say. Racing games was one of them. Like, we had Mario Kart 8, and we had like Team Sonic Racing and Crash Team Racing. But those are kart races. Like, when it comes to just like realistic racing, there's no choice really. Like, you got like Burnout Paradise, but nothing new. And I'd say the same's true for shooters. Like, you had ports of Fortnite and Apex, but there were some genres which were just kind of bare on the Switch 1 unless you were going for like legacy, like Xbox 360 and back ports. And that's already not really the case. Like, Switch 2 is already getting like those kind of caliber games. It's kind of alien, and it's nice.
I couldn't agree more. I feel like Switch 2 is getting a lot of games across a lot of genres, and I think it's due largely to the fact that Nintendo did so well with the Switch 1, and a lot of developers and publishers slept on it, fearing a Wii U sized catastrophe. And now that Nintendo is quite successful, they're trying to get in early on Switch 2, which is just a massive benefit for all of us that are playing and buying these games.
Yeah. So I think we're both just really enjoying the console. Like, obviously, more high quality, high caliber first party software would be greatly appreciated. Everybody is waiting for that console defining game, and right now Donkey Kong, I'd say, is it. But we want like one game isn't enough, and Mario Kart's great too. But it's also like, that's a known quantity game. Kirby might be it for some people, but for me, I think there's a collection of like smaller sort of spin-offy games right now, which are all good, but they're not that thing that we yearn for. Exactly.
There's nothing that captures the zeitgeist in gaming the way that Breath of the Wild did in 2017, or even some of those smash hits from that year, Splatoon, Super Mario Odyssey. We're all waiting for that big game, the one that Nintendo hasn't told us about yet. I think everybody will know it when they see it too. It's a weird thing where I saw DK Bonanza and I was like, this is cool. I like this a lot. It's definitely not going to sway people's opinion of the console though. Like, I think when everyone saw Breath of the Wild, there was kind of a collective oh wow moment in gaming. Everyone was like, this is going to be huge. And they were right. Breath of the Wild to this day is one of the best games Nintendo has ever released. And that's not to throw shade on anything that is out for Switch 2 now. Like we've said repeatedly throughout this episode, I think they're all great games. But there's no denying that they're just not of that same caliber. And to be fair, so few games are. So it's difficult to say when Nintendo will unleash something that will really solidify people's view of the Switch 2 as like a a really great console, but I have to say, for me, it's great now. I love it as it is, and I'll just be that much more excited when we get, that big release we're all kind of waiting to see.
Yeah, and the third parties have just never been more important than they are now. Like, it's at that point where you just get really good versions of these games, and the question of, like, should I get this on PS5 or Switch 2 just becomes blurrier and blurrier, which is wonderful to see. And it just kind of shows how, like, that diminishing returns in hardware has been happening. And we're getting that more and more right now in the state that GPUs are in and what RAM is in. Like, NVIDIA are selling old GPUs now. People are clearly going to be making games that kind of hit that sort of hardware again. And I don't know when we're moving forward or when it's even plausible to move forward, but we're kind of Switch 2 kind of benefits from that.
Yeah, we're in a funny place, technologically speaking, where Nintendo has released this incredibly advanced handheld, and taking out the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and even desktop PCs for a moment, you start to see that we all collectively groaned at the price of the Switch 2 being $450 or $500, depending on which one you bought. But now you're seeing PC handhelds coming out, and they're over $1,000. We had the Xbox Series X. Lenovo just announced like the Steam OS Legion Go, and that's like $1,200.
Yeah.
That's wild to me. Like, the Switch 2 becomes a greater value proposition the more other people start talking. And so we're seeing, like I'd much rather pay $500 for a Switch 2 that runs these games the way it does than $1,000 for an Xbox ROG Ally or a Lenovo, Go. And I think that it's a strange place we're in. Like you said, NVIDIA just released the RTX 3060.
Yeah.
To give you guys some context, GVG is 5 years old, and I had a better GPU than that in my computer when we founded GVG.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a weird place collectively for this hobby for us to exist in. I think that Switch 2 does benefit massively from these companies, from this RAM shortage and from this chip shortage, at least for now. There's the very real possibility that the Switch 2 price may have to go up, which I hope not. Yeah. I'm grateful I have mine, but I think that, it stalls us moving forward technologically, which is objectively a bad thing. But in this very hyper use case, it means that developers will likely continue to target machines that are as capable as or less capable than the Switch 2, which means we will get more games on our platform of choice. And that, at least, is a good thing.
Yeah. Bringing back those legacy GPUs actually was part of the new DLSS update as well. So it's on 4.5 now. And that update, like, the frame generation is only for the new GPUs, but in terms of enhancing DLSS resolution and stability, that's going all the way back to the 30 series and even the 20s. So presumably Switch 2 will benefit from that, from like the 4.5 DLSS.
Yeah, I've seen some people already say that DLSS 4.5 will be available for Switch 2. I don't know where people are getting that from.
It might be wishful thinking, but it makes sense though. Like, it's machine learning. It's not going to stay static the entire lifetime. So that weird hair of Resident Evil Requiem might be a thing of the past in a year or two.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because as DLSS gets smarter, things like that, those fine details that show artifacting worse than anything else, like you see it in Final Fantasy VII Remake demo as well. Like the Cloud's hair is the only thing that really looks worse than the PS5. And people are quick to point that out. But I think that we'll see, as these machine learning models get better at stuff like that and NVIDIA continues to improve it, that it'll be almost like we download graphics updates for the Switch 2 games. And
pretty much.
I'll be happy with that. I'd love to see our visuals improve, but I'm very happy with where they're at now.
Yeah. Well, I think we can keep going in circles, but the end story really is that it's a cool handheld. Like, yes, it's still early days. Yes, being an early adopter is always a risk, and you're always going to be waiting around for, when you like go and get a Switch now, you look at it and there's Mario Kart, there's Smash, there's 3D Mario, there's multiple Zeldas, there's Metroid. All that stuff takes time. It's never just there at the start. And even with Switch 1, it wasn't there at the start. Like, it was a good first year, but you still had to wait a while until the library felt complete. And Switch 2 has the benefit of having that library. You can just play all the Switch 1 stuff, and it's better there. So, as a place to play games, wonderful. As a full library, obviously, still early days.
I couldn't agree more. There's a lot more to come. The Switch 2 is only going to get better with age, and I don't think that's something that I would have said of the Switch 1 initially, because it had such an amazing first year. In a weird way, I'm more excited now than I was in the run up to the console, because I have the console now. I know that it's good, and I know that Nintendo's just going to keep adding games that make it a better place to play. So yeah, I'm excited to see what we get this year, because we know very little. We're in January. We know of a handful of games, but Nintendo has a lot more cooking.
Exactly. All right, Steve. I think that's probably us about tapped on Switch 2's first 6 months. We've got a lot more of exciting stuff to look forward to. We're working a lot of videos right now for the year, and it's an exciting time. But that's probably it for now. So thank you so much for listening to The Week in Nintendo. If you want to, you can support us over on Patreon, where we give you a lot of bonuses like early videos. You can also watch most of our recordings as they happen live, and also communicate and help us in the top 10s and so much more. So do consider supporting us over there. But until next time, everybody, bye-bye.
Bye.